Ukraine on Tuesday agreed to accept a U.S. proposal for an immediate 30-day ceasefire in the conflict with Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the agreement after more than 8 hours of talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation.
Rubio said he would now take the offer to Moscow.
And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball is now in their court.
The development comes after a stunning Oval Office shouting match between the presidents of the two countries.
You're gambling with World War III.
The rift had immediate repercussions for Ukraine. President Donald Trump canceled military support and ended crucial intelligence sharing. But as part of accepting the proposed ceasefire, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said Washington will resume sharing aid and intelligence with Kyiv.
And that's effective immediately.
Outside the White House, Trump said there would be a U.S. meeting with Russia to discuss the ceasefire plan soon.
Hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
Is Zelensky invited back to the White House?
Sure, absolutely.
Later, Russia's foreign ministry said it didn't rule out contacts with U.S. representatives over the next several days, according to state news agency RIA. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was in Saudi Arabia but did not participate in the talks, said the ceasefire was a positive proposal.
Вважаємо це позитивним.
He also said the two countries would work to finalize a minerals agreement.
The U.S. Department of Education said on Tuesday it would lay off nearly half its staff, a possible first step towards a total shutdown.
Nobody shows up to work because
The move comes as government agencies scramble to meet President Donald Trump's Thursday deadline to submit plans for a second round of mass layoffs. The terminations are part of what the department called in a press release its, quote, final mission, alluding to Trump's vow to eliminate the department.
President Trump understands that we'll be working with Congress.
Asked on Fox News whether the firings would lead to the department's dismantling, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon said yes, adding that doing so, quote, was the president's mandate. The Department of Education oversees $1.6 trillion in college loans, enforces civil rights laws in schools, and provides federal funding for needy districts. The department said affected employees will be placed on administrative leave starting on March 21st. Meanwhile, the union representing more than 2,800 department workers there vowed to fight what it called the draconian cuts. The layoffs are the latest step in Trump's sweeping effort to downsize the government. Led by billionaire Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE has cut more than 100,000 jobs across the 2.3 million-member federal civilian bureaucracy, frozen most foreign aid, and canceled thousands of programs and contracts. Dozens of lawsuits have been filed challenging the legality of those moves, and the blunt force approach has frustrated several White House officials and Republican lawmakers, some of whom have been confronted by angry constituents at town halls.
Donald Trump's tariffs on imports of metals took effect Wednesday. They imposed 25% duties on shipments of steel and aluminum, with no countries excepted. The tariffs also hit hundreds of products made from the metals, from nuts and bolts to bulldozer blades and soda cans. Within hours, the EU fired back with $28 billion in reciprocal duties. Those tariffs will kick in from the start of next month. Canada is also mulling how to respond to the latest moves. Speaking Tuesday in Houston, Texas, Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson said Canada could limit sales of oil to the US.
But when we're talking about sort of non-tariff retaliation, it could be about restricting supply. It could be putting our own export duties on products. It could be energy and minerals. It could be broader than that.
Canada is the largest supplier of imported oil to the US, shipping some 4 million barrels per day. Wilkinson says a levy on US ethanol is another option being considered. In Australia, the government was disappointed not to win an exemption from the new tariffs, something Trump said last month he would seriously consider. However, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it would be counterproductive for Australia to respond with tariffs of its own.
Tariffs and escalating trade tensions are a form of economic self-harm and a recipe for slower growth and higher inflation. They are paid by the consumers. This is why Australia will not be imposing reciprocal tariffs on the United States.
Other countries facing a significant hit from the Trump tariffs include Brazil, Mexico and South Korea. However, the new charges have been welcomed by a US Steel Industry Association, which said the measures would supercharge domestic production. Investors are less sure, with US stocks shedding more than $4 trillion in value over recent weeks amid concerns about the trade war. Donald Trump has defended his use of tariffs and dismissed concerns about market volatility sparked by the global trade turmoil. Speaking to a gathering of business leaders in Washington on Tuesday, the US president said his trade policy was already showing results.
We have car companies that are not building in Mexico now, they're building in the United States. Some of them, the plants were already started and they stopped construction, and now they're going to build in the United States. It was very unfair that they'd build in Mexico and sell them across the border with no tax, no nothing.
In the audience were around 100 CEOs, and some of them may be feeling growing unease. They've all seen some $4 trillion wiped off the value of US stocks in recent weeks, amid fears over the impact of the trade war. Businesses have also been concerned by the volatility of the tariffs, which have been variously imposed and delayed, raised and lowered. On Tuesday there was more of that, with turmoil over duties on Canadian metals. Early in the day, Trump said he would double levies to 50%. He was responding to a move by the Canadian province of Ontario to impose its own tariffs on electricity supplied to America. Hours later, Ontario dropped the move, and Trump said US duties would stick at 25%. The fresh day of turmoil drove another down day for stocks, outweighing glimmers of hope over a Ukraine ceasefire. More big firms, including retailer Kohl's, also warned that the darkening economic outlook was hitting sales. In the end, the Dow Jones Index closed the day down another 1%. But if that worries Trump, it didn't show on Tuesday.
The tariffs are having a tremendously positive impact. They will have, and they are having.
Trump said his tariffs would generate a lot of money for the US and could be raised even higher in the days ahead.
Palestinians in Gaza have weathered a year and a half of war and are used to making do without electricity. But a decision by the Israeli government to cut the supply of electricity, including to a crucial water treatment plant, has sparked fresh warnings of a dire health crisis. Ahmed Al-Rubai manages the water desalination plant in Deir el-Balah. The power cut has forced the plant to turn to fuel generators to keep operating. But fuel must be brought in through crossings, and crossings are controlled by Israel.
With the closure of the crossings and the shortage of fuel supplies, we currently cannot predict how long we can operate on generators. If the closure of crossings continues, the situation threatens to become a catastrophe.
He said daily clean water output has plummeted from 18,000 cubic meters to just 2,000 cubic meters, a drop of 80%. That means civilians may turn to contaminated water. Tariq Shaheen is the director of the Deir el-Balah municipality.
This threatens the spread of intestinal or skin diseases and reduced hygiene among citizens. Therefore, we expect that if the closure continues, God forbid, an environmental and health disaster will occur.
The war was triggered by a Hamas-led cross-border attack on southern Israel in October 2023 that killed 1,200 people and saw 251 taken hostage, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's retaliation has killed more than 48,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza health officials, left most of its people destitute, and razed much of the territory to the ground. Israel's energy minister instructed the state power company to cut sales of electricity to Gaza, which he described as a means of pressuring Hamas to free hostages. The first phase of a ceasefire that expired last week saw the release of some Israeli captives, or their bodies, in exchange for thousands of Palestinians held in Israeli jails. It's unclear whether the sides will proceed to a second phase.
Greenland's pro-business opposition party won Tuesday's closely watched parliamentary election. Democratic beat out the incumbent left-wing coalition in a vote overshadowed by U.S. President Donald Trump's pledge to take control of the island, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. Demokrat finished just over 5 points ahead of the opposition Nalaraq party with nearly 30% of the vote. The former favors a slow approach to independence from Denmark, while the latter has pushed for a rapid break. Demokrat's leader Jens Frederik Nielsen told reporters that, quote, "We don't want independence tomorrow. We want a good foundation." Now the party will try to form a governing coalition, says Democratic lawmaker Anna Wangenheim.
I'm overwhelmed and I'm very happy. Very happy. Our main focus will be the politics we've been elected for. Then we will have to talk to the other parties where they stand.
Greenland's population of just 57,000 has been caught up in a geopolitical race for dominance in the Arctic. Melting ice caps are making Arctic resources more accessible and opening new shipping routes. Both Russia and China have intensified military activity in the region. Since taking office in January, Trump has vowed to make the vast mineral-rich island part of the United States, saying it is vital to U.S. security interests.
One way or the other, we're going to get it.
Many Greenlanders were alarmed when Trump initially declined to rule out military force to take control of the territory, although he later softened his stance, saying he would respect the will of the local people and was ready to invest billions of dollars if they joined the U.S. That idea has been rejected by most Greenlanders. And on Monday, in the final debate before the election, leaders of the 5 parties currently in parliament unanimously said they did not trust the U.S. president. Meanwhile, Denmark's prime minister has said Greenland is not for sale, but made it clear that it is up to the local people to decide their future.
Shares of the big 3 U.S. airlines slumped on Tuesday after disappointing forecasts from Delta and American sparked concerns about travel demand amid a slowing economy. Delta shares tumbled roughly 9% after the legacy carrier slashed its first-quarter profit forecast. American Airlines tumbled more than 6% following expectations of a wider loss. The outlooks weighed on shares of United Airlines, which dropped about 5%. President Donald Trump's tariffs have raised concerns about an economic slowdown and reduced discretionary spending, prompting travelers to exercise caution when planning trips. That's an abrupt shift for the airlines, which just 2 months ago were benefiting from strong travel demand and high pricing across their networks. Budget carrier Southwest Airlines on Tuesday also cut its unit revenue growth forecast. But the company said it would start charging some customers for checked bags in an effort to shore up its earnings. Shares of Southwest rose as much as 16% in early Tuesday trading, but gave back some gains by midday.
Spotify says it paid a record $10 billion in royalties to artists in 2024. The streaming giant said that was the largest ever payout to the music industry in a single year. Of that total, nearly 1,500 artists earned over $1 million in royalties. The Swedish firm said its total payouts had risen 10 times from just $1 billion in 2014. Last year, Spotify was hit with a US lawsuit accusing it of underpaying songwriting royalties for tens of millions of songs. A federal judge in New York then ruled to dismiss that suit this year. The company recently signed multi-year deals with major labels including Warner Music and Universal Music. Chief Executive Daniel Ek said Spotify would introduce personalized offerings, including a premium tier called Superfans of Music. The firm forecast it would hit 678 million monthly active users over the first quarter.
Porsche warned there could be a bumpy ride ahead this year. Investors were spooked and shares dropped 4% after the luxury car maker said Wednesday a lot of factors could hit earnings. It cited its large-scale restructure, trade tensions and growing competition in China. And that's even before the possibility of higher US tariffs on EU imports. Porsche shares dropped sharply last month when it warned it would take a financial hit. It said this was due to a near $873 million spend on new internal combustion engine and hybrid models. Porsche is currently pursuing a cost-cutting drive as it shrinks its workforce by just under 4,000 jobs and it plans further cuts. Sales dropped 3% last year and it expects even lower numbers this year. There's also the spectre of new tariffs President Donald Trump may impose on car imports from Europe. Such a move could hurt Porsche's sales in its biggest single-country market. Its CFO said Wednesday they will assess the option of passing on some costs to consumers. They added they hoped a sensible tariff regime will prevail. Porsche originally debuted on the stock market 3 years ago, valued higher than parent company Volkswagen, but it's struggled to keep the pace since. Low sales in China haven't helped, with a drop of 28% last year, and it's also seen tepid electric vehicle demand. But Porsche will keep its dividend for 2024 at the previous year's level.